I'm skipping a workout for this one.
I'm having a good time, having a good time.
What is up, my Yu-Gi Bros? I am your host, the one, the only, the RJB0, making sure y'all have a good time. Today is Casual Friday. It's been 2 weeks now, and I've been accumulating some pretty good questions. I'm going to be cutting them down because I am going out for the evening because it is Friday, and I do go to college, so, you know. Next week, I have 2 discussions coming your way, not 1, but 2, and after that, I'm actually going to be doing some fun deck profiles. I'm going to be switching my deck profiles over to being more casually focused, while my discussions are more competitively focused. And then, of course, I'm going to have Casual Friday next week. Let's get down to some Q&A. We begin with the Garunix King asking, do you think that Yu-Gi-Oh's rules on chains are the best way of doing it? Yes, I think that Yu-Gi-Oh does have the best way of working chains, mostly because it makes rulings much easier, and the way that Yu-Gi-Oh cards work, the way that spell speeds work, it's incredibly effective to use this form of chains where the chains cannot be interrupted and they work from the top down. I've seen other ways of doing it and they just don't make as much sense for Yu-Gi-Oh! Romeo Barnes asks, if you could create an archetype, what would its attribute be? What mechanic would the deck have? And what would the name be? Okay, so I've talked before about my, what did I call them? I called them like Winter Terrors or something like that. They're a water burn deck which focuses around interactive burn effects. So they've got very, very kind of generic adding to hand, special summoning from deck, things like that effects with before Constellation Factor, Stellar Nova Alpha, I actually had a trap card that did the exact same thing for that deck, but also burned for 800. So basically it has all of those effects, but it adds burn damage on top, so it actually speeds up the deck's win condition. It's a really interesting idea. I don't have a boss monster worked out for it, but I want to try and finish the deck and see if I can get some duels with it for you to see. Yu-Gi-Old, who is quickly becoming one of my favorite commenters for this video, asks, has Silent Honor Arc run its course? Is there a good reason for me to keep him, her, it in my Satellar Extra deck? Actually, Honor Arc has basically become like a less useful Castel, aside from the extra 100 attack and its potential to be boosted by Abyss Dweller, which is why I still run it in Mermails sometimes. I haven't quite decided yet, but it is something that I've considered. It actually doesn't do anything particularly amazing, this format, since the vast majority of removal does not involve destruction, and since it is more limited than Castel, I would actually just say, if you're thinking of running Silent Honor Arc, just run a second Castel. Great question. Anthem Log asks, how do you see Chainbeat doing now and in the future? Is it a thing of the past, this meta, or can it still work? So the problem with this meta for anti-meta decks, specifically Chainbeat, is that in the past, you have actually had to go through a somewhat complex procedure in order to gain advantage in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! The decks that didn't do that were the anti-meta decks, were the decks like Chainbeat, that didn't really do many combos and didn't really produce a lot of advantage as they were, but they didn't have to go through many complex procedures. Now we've got a combination of those two things. You've got decks that gain a lot of advantage, but don't actually have to do a huge amount to get there. And so that's the problem with anti-meta decks like Chainbeat operating today, is that they have a greater trouble disrupting that kind of effect than they did with the decks that had to go on long combos in order to gain large amounts of advantage, or facing down decks that only put 1 or 2 monsters down on the board, at which point Chainbeat could just remove that monster and then go in for the damage. Jay Gant asks, what Shadow support could come out to help combat the current meta? Well, I would say a Shadow Fusion monster, or some kind of Shadow boss monster, that blocked graveyard effects would be great. I think that having Mass Change 2nd and Darklaw come out has something of the same effect for the deck, but it isn't specific to Shadows, and so Burning Abyss can use it against them, and Burning Abyss is basically the worst fear of Shadows besides Cliff Wards. As far as taking on Cliff Wards, I would say that really what Shadows need is just to side the hands, because Cliff Wards really do not have an out to the hands hands except Soul Drain, and the hands wreck their strategy. Aura Storm asks, do you think Turnover Soul could be viable in other rogue strategies? I think that Turnover Soul is going to be a factor in the game for a long time, and not just in Clifford's. We're going to see it being used in a variety of decks in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the future. I'm not certain about any current decks, any current rogue decks or current tier 2 decks that are likely to see Turnover play or Turnover Soul play, but I think that in the future we're definitely going to see it in some rogue strategies. Simo asks, when you do your homework, are you
Having a good time, having a good time.
And I'd say, yeah.
I'm having such a good time, I'm having a ball.
Anubis asks, if you could make a generic rank 4 monster, what would it do? Effect negation, effect negation, effect negation. We need more rank 4 monsters that can stop plays and not just respond to them. Maybe a rank 4 that could negate summons or destroy monsters as soon as they're summoned. That could also be helpful. But really, honestly, like, rank 4 decks' biggest problem is usually they cannot stop plays. So a generic rank 4 that would stop plays would be pretty good. Haruki Altair asks, what would you say to siding System Down in order to hit Clifforts in a deck, supposing you have the room? System Down is not a great card against Clifforts. There are cards that similarly clear the board, but if Clifforts have enough monsters on the board in order to make it worth using System Down, it's probably because you've already lost the game. Field Kate asks, what is your favorite ruling? Oh man, I'd have to say anything having to do with interdimensional matter transporter. Anytime you want to just be totally confused about the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, go on the wiki and look at rulings for interdimensional matter transporter. They are just the wildest thing. Hades X736 asks, do you think it's worth picking up some banned cards, seeing that Konami has been bringing them back somewhat randomly? Yes, it is always worth it to have a banned card collection, I think. Because as long as the cards are like a reasonable price when you get them, they will always go up right before the ban list, so you can always get a little bit of profit right before the ban list, or if the ban list actually hits and the cards come back, then you get just like a ton of money out of it. It's a great way to build a binder right now. Slate Warrior asks, what sports do you actually watch and how dedicated are you to watching them? So I watch football kind of not incredibly closely. Like, I watch the Seahawks whenever I can, but I usually don't have time like on days when the game is on. Kind of the story of my following sports started with my grandpa, who introduced me to the Cubs and the Bears early on because he's from Chicago. And so I watched Cubs games and Bears games a lot when I was a kid. And then the dang game with, I think it must have been Dallas. It was a long time ago when the Bears got to the Super Bowl and they lost on just the worst call by the referee, where a guy like pushed the ball over the line into the end zone after he got tackled. It was really awful. Like, it was just an awful call. And so after that, I kind of gave up on the Cubs. Well, I didn't give up on the Cubs. I still watched the Cubs. But I kind of gave up on the Bears. I started watching the Seahawks because, you know, they were my home team. And now it's funny because I root for the Seahawks kind of passively, even though I've been watching them kind of passively for a long time. And I get all this hate like, oh man, you're on the Seahawks bandwagon. I'm just like, son, are you kidding me? So, that's kind of the story of me in sports. I also watch the Mariners whenever I can do it live. Like, their live games are a lot of fun if you actually go to Safeco Field. Just a lot of fun. I followed the Phillies for a while, too. Will P89 asks, can you talk about when it's appropriate to blind MST? I actually have a whole video about how to use MST properly, and I think I can link you guys to it. I'll have to see. I do not have a huge amount of time this afternoon. In fact, in 11 minutes, I'm going to be going out with friends. However, I will see if I can dig up my MST video and send it your way. But I know that I have one, so I guess if you, like, search the RJB0 MST, then you will probably find it. I've gotten a lot of questions about Spirit Beast, and I think that Spirit Beasts are a lot of fun, and they look like a great deck, but one of the problems that they have is that one of their best cards, the card that destroys cards on the field, destroys cards, so that's kind of an issue, and also their fusion monsters are not amazing. If they could get a couple more good fusion monsters, then I think that the mechanic A is really fun, and B could do a lot. I do get a lot of questions about people asking me how certain decks that are not doing well in the current meta could do better, and really every time I'm just going to say get better cards. Every one of these kind of has unique better cards that they could get, but like in the long run it's just about them getting better cards to support the deck, and like better very specific cards. And oftentimes it's just like an incredibly good card that they need in order to compete with the meta, because a lot of these decks just frankly have slow and underwhelming mechanics. So that is my Q&A for this week. Like I said, I am probably going to have 2 discussions next week. Oh man, we seem to have a last-minute appearance from our good friend Devin, who frequently appears shirtless on this show now, I guess. Oh no. That did not go as expected. Hey, look!
Now, right?
It's, yep, as of right now. There's our good...
camera. Better rip my shirt off.
Yep.
There we go.
There he goes. He's gonna go get some toast. There you guys go. That is Casual Friday for this week. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you did, let me know why in the comment section below. And of course, subscribe for more decks, discussion, analysis, and general Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. Remember, if you want me to answer any questions during the next Casual Friday, ask them in the comment section below. I cannot guarantee that I get to you this week, but I will try to get to as many as possible. Thank you guys for watching. I'm your host, the one, the only, the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you guys.